Our story begins with a young man whose stomach was a literal bottomless pit. When his parents realized this, they opened a crematorium specifically for him. You see, there is an unwritten rule that monster carcasses always have a bit of residue left behind. Decades ago, the world was suddenly invaded. Humans paid a heavy price to learn how to consume monster blood and cores to grow stronger. However, the rest of the monster's body remained a problem. Whether raw or cooked, anyone who tried to eat the meat would inevitably meet a grim end. But with thousands of monsters being slain every year, their bodies would become sources of pollution if not handled quickly. Thus, the monster crematoriums were born. But as Leo grew older, the tiny bits of residue were no longer enough to keep him satisfied. One day, while he was moving carcasses with his father, Arthur, Leo reached his breaking point. He told his father he wanted to take just one bite of the meat, which nearly gave Arthur a heart attack. Arthur snapped at him, reminding Leo for the 100th time that monster meat was strictly forbidden. He warned him not to even think about it. Arthur even threatened to break his legs. Leo could only sigh, looking at the meat and wondering why something so filling was off limits. Arthur pointed to the large characters painted on the furnace wall. He told Leo to read them clearly. Monster meat is not for consumption. Eat it, and your eyes will turn red as you transform into a monster. Arthur suggested that if Leo was truly starving, he should stick to the essence. He told Leo to put the idea out of his head and went to check on dinner, leaving Leo to handle the remaining carcasses alone. After his father left, Leo looked at the bodies and couldn't help but swallow hard. Just as he was about to toss a carcass into the furnace, he felt a sudden surge of heat at his waist. A moment later, a palm-sized picture book suddenly flew out into the air. It was a little trinket he had picked up at a flea market, something he usually just kept stuffed in his pocket. Deep down, he had forgotten it was even there. But now, the book began to glow with a strange, mystical light. The pages described the meat as tough and tasteless, yet a pity to waste. It suggested slow cooking it with 50 grams of wine and 200 grams of mushrooms. Apparently, this would slightly increase one's strength and satisfy hunger. The book's final note? Even a dog wouldn't eat this. Leo gasped. He wondered if the heavens had finally taken pity on his empty stomach and granted him a miracle. This was essentially a monster cookbook. It was a modern guide to survival, though he did wonder if it was actually safe. He didn't want to accidentally eat himself to death. That rational thought lingered in his mind for only a few seconds before being swept away by a wave of intense hunger. After all, life and death are up to fate. Just then, his mother called out, explaining that she and Arthur had to leave for a while because a distant relative next door was on his deathbed. In a moment of pure, hungry distraction, Leo blurted out that the timing of the death was perfect. Naturally, the air in the room froze instantly. His mother's face darkened immediately as she asked him to repeat himself. Realizing his massive blunder, Leo scrambled to fix his words. He quickly claimed he meant it was a tragedy for the man to pass, so young at only 80 years old. His mother, Sarah, gave a cold snort. She clearly didn't believe his nonsense, but she didn't press him further. She told him to stay home and handle any monster deliveries that arrived. She had already called his school to request a leave of absence so he could watch the shop. Leo nodded obediently, playing the part of the good son. To be honest, he had no desire to return to that school anyway. He couldn't learn their cultivation methods, and he was far too hungry to move. In his current state, even standing up felt like a chore. Once his parents were safely out of sight, he immediately began cooking the iron-tail eagle. He let it stew for a full half-hour until it was thoroughly cooked. Then, he picked up a mushroom soaked in rich broth and popped it into his mouth. Instantly, a familiar warm current surged through his entire body. It felt remarkably similar to the sensation of consuming monster essence, and it was delicious. He realized he had been living like a pauper until now, but as he was reflecting on his past, his stomach suddenly let out a loud, rumbling growl. Suddenly, a powerful surge of energy erupted through his limbs. His eyes widened in shock, recognizing this energy as Qi, the very foundation of cultivation. Developing Qi is the standard for any high school student, but Leo was born with a body that couldn't retain spiritual energy at all. Cultivation had always been an impossibility for him. Yet, after eating one single bird, he had somehow awakened his Qi directly. The golden light flickered before his eyes again, announcing he had gained the Iron-Tail Eagle's talent, power rotation, along with a cultivation map. Following the map's guidance, he carefully moved the energy through his body. He then aimed his hand at a heavy cobblestone used to steady a table. With a sharp strike, his fingers sank deep into the stone, leaving 5 distinct holes. To his surprise, his hand didn't hurt in the slightest. He nodded with immense satisfaction. This talent felt like a complete cheat code, and who could blame him for feeling a bit smug about it? While others had to swallow expensive monster cores to gain talents, he only had to eat dinner. It was, quite frankly, a wonderful way to live. He quickly pulled out the cultivation manual provided by his school, using the map to guide the energy's flow. In just 15 minutes, he had already broken through. Reaching the first realm of cultivation, he turned his gaze toward the remaining carcasses with a hungry grin, promising his little treasures he would enjoy them tomorrow. Early the next morning, a series of urgent knocks startled him awake. A voice outside shouted, asking if anyone was still there to accept monster deliveries. Leo practically leaped to the door and found their neighbor, Mr. Miller, pulling several carcasses of 8th-rank moon-smiling dogs. It was quite the haul. Seeing only the boy, Mr. Miller hesitated, doubting Leo could handle the work alone and suggesting he might take them to another crematorium instead. Terrified of losing such a delicious meal, Leo grabbed the man's arm and insisted he could handle it. He explained his parents were away at a funeral. He assured the neighbor that after years of helping his father, he knew the process by heart. He promised the task would be completed perfectly. Mr. Miller finally relaxed, though he warned that things had been dangerous lately, with 8th-rank monsters appearing far too frequently within the city. There were even rumors of spirit mirror monsters appearing, leading many to suspect a spatial rift had opened nearby. A worrying thought, to be sure. He told Leo to be careful while home alone and reminded him that the monsters would become too contaminated to eat after 3 days. Leo nodded eagerly, promising to get the job done. Once he saw Mr. Miller off, he practically ran toward those moon-smiling dog carcasses. At that moment, the mysterious book flipped open again. It noted the dogs were 8th rank with mediocre meat, though they could slightly increase his strength. Eating them would also enhance his sense of smell, allowing him to detect the power levels of nearby monsters. A very practical upgrade, indeed. The book's final comment was a dry remark about not eating dogs. Leo couldn't help but laugh at how picky the book seemed to be. Even an 8th-rank monster wasn't good enough for its refined tastes. Regardless, he knew he had to hurry and process these monsters immediately. Over the next 7 days, he finished off the remaining eagle and the dogs. His internal energy surged, breaking through to the 7th realm. Even his power claw talent grew more formidable. Where he once only left marks on stone, he could now pierce through it as easily, as if he were stabbing through soft tofu. His strength now far exceeded that of an ordinary high school student. Then, at midnight, something changed. A strange noise echoed from outside. Using his newly enhanced sense of smell, he detected a monster of roughly the 5th realm lurking at his door. He immediately remembered Mr. Miller's warning about the spatial rift. It seemed the danger had arrived, so he threw open the door, ready to face it. He decided to use the beast outside to test his current strength, finding a 6-foot-tall rat with blood-red eyes staring him down. Leo beckoned the creature forward with a taunting gesture. Enraged, the rat lunged at him, but he calmly channeled the energy within his body. With a quick sidestep, he dodged the rat's attack and raised his right hand, slamming it down with immense force onto the creature's back. A dull thud echoed as his fingers pierced 5 clean holes through the rat's spine. He walked slowly toward the carcass, quite satisfied with himself. He muttered that a mere rodent was no match for him. At that moment, the mysterious leaves appeared again, floating before his eyes. The book identified it as a 5th realm earth rat, noting the meat was of terrible quality and not recommended for consumption. Not everything is a delicacy, apparently. So he tossed the carcass into the incinerator, hoping to refine a monster core instead. After all, those could still be sold for a decent price. Monsters emerging from a rift usually indicate the danger level of the rift itself, since only 5th and 6th realm beasts were appearing. It suggested the rift wasn't too perilous yet. With his current strength, he could handle it easily, and perhaps even find something valuable. He had heard stories of people finding high-level treasures in low-level rifts, turning them into instant geniuses. It was better than winning the lottery. Driven by this thought, he decided to follow the lingering scent of the earth rat to locate the exact position of the spatial rift. Finally, less than a mile from his home, he discovered a shimmering silver rift. Without a second thought, he stepped through the portal. Inside, he found 2 paths. Using his enhanced sense of smell, he detected no danger coming from the right path and headed that way. 5 minutes later, a temple named 1,000 Buddhas appeared before him. This was certainly not the monster-filled dungeon he had expected. As he stood there confused, wondering where the enemies were, a young monk began walking toward him from within the temple grounds. The monk introduced himself as Justin and explained that the abbot wished to speak with him. Leo responded politely, though he was suspicious. He wondered how the abbot could have known he was coming. Justin explained that the mountain was protected by a formation that detected all visitors. The monk gestured for him to enter with a smile. However, in that brief moment of politeness, Leo noticed something very unsettling. Between the monk's smiling teeth, there were still remnants of raw meat. A rather strange diet for a man of the cloth, wouldn't you say? If this place was so holy, why would a monk have meat in his teeth? Something felt very wrong about this peaceful temple. What could this possibly mean? Breaking a precept is one thing, but the real question was where that meat came from. Still, Leo decided not to overthink it. Since he had already come this far, there was no reason to back down now. He followed Justin to a meditation room, where the monk spoke in a soft, welcoming tone. The abbot considers you an honored guest, Justin explained, and since you are from the secular world, he ordered a wild chicken caught and brewed into a hot soup just for you. A moment later, another monk entered carrying a steaming bowl, but as Leo looked down at the meat inside, he froze in sudden realization. This wasn't chicken, it was iron-tail eagle meat. He wondered how long these mad monks had been consuming monsters, considering they didn't have his unique system to protect them. Eating too much of this would eventually turn them into monsters, transforming the entire temple into a living purgatory. And then there was the matter of Justin himself. The young monk's cultivation was at least at the 9th heaven, meaning the abbot and the others must be even stronger. Perhaps, Leo realized, he had been a bit too reckless. Seeing him hesitate, Justin asked softly why he wasn't eating, wondering if the meal was perhaps not to his liking. Leo quickly came up with an excuse, claiming that as monks, they surely didn't know how to prepare meat properly. He offered to show them his own skills in the kitchen. He insisted on working alone, citing a secret family recipe that couldn't be shared. After a brief moment of hesitation, Justin agreed to let him proceed. Using his previous method for handling the eagle meat, he soon prepared a fragrant soup. 3 days passed in this manner, with Justin bringing him fresh eagle meat every morning. It was a blessing in disguise, really. Not only did he awaken the eagle eye skill, vastly improving his dynamic vision, but his cultivation also surged. He reached the spirit realm, which he sensed was the absolute power limit for this particular space. Now, whatever the monks were planning, he felt ready to face it. Meanwhile, inside the abbot's private quarters, we find Justin kneeling on the floor in a state of deep concern. "Master, I have watched him consume the monster remains with my own eyes," Justin reported, yet he shows absolutely no signs of demonic transformation. The abbot suddenly grabbed Justin by the throat, snarling that it was impossible. Without their temple's secret protection, no one could resist the corruption of the monster meat. He demanded to know if Justin was lying to him. Trembling, the young monk swore that every word was the absolute truth, and he would never dare deceive his master. The abbot slowly released his grip, deciding that he would handle the matter personally starting tomorrow. He then dismissed the shaken monk from the room. The next morning, Justin arrived with a fake smile and a tray of simple food, claiming the wild chickens were becoming scarce and Leo would have to settle for vegetarian fare. Leo put on a look of disappointment, remarking that it was a shame. However, he then told Justin that he had likely stayed at the temple long enough. He explained that staying any longer would be an imposition, and he intended to set off for home the very next morning. Justin hurriedly tried to stop him, asking if something about his stay had been unpleasant. Leo simply shook his head. The food and the scenery were wonderful, he admitted, making this place a true paradise compared to the monster-infested world outside. Justin pressed his palms together, suggesting that if Leo liked it so much, he should simply stay at Thousand Buddha Mountain forever. He even offered Leo the chance to visit the library and choose a secret technique to master. Leo's interest was instantly piqued. Thinking he might actually find something valuable to help him escape, he agreed and followed Justin toward the ancient library. However, the moment he stepped inside, a rich, strange fragrance filled the air. Driven by curiosity, he began to search the room. In a hidden passage, he discovered a crystal coffin containing the body of a woman in red, her face veiled and a crimson mark by her eye. As he stood there puzzled, a chilling, bone-deep voice echoed from the coffin, pleading with him to wipe away the golden seal on the lid. His instinct was to run, but his body began to move against his will, reaching out to obey the mysterious command. The moment the seal was broken, everything went black. When he finally opened his eyes, he found himself back in his guest room. He sat cross-legged, slowly circulating his energy to recover, when a sudden knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. He opened it to find Justin standing there with a white-bearded old man, who introduced himself as the temple abbot. The abbot remarked that despite days of nourishing soup, Leo still looked weak. To be honest, it was a rather transparent lie. He claimed to have refined special pills to strengthen Leo's foundation and insisted that he swallow them right then and there. Leo found the situation almost amusing. It seemed the monks had upgraded their tactics from monster soup to monster pills. He accepted the pills with a polite thank you. The old monk clearly wanted to corrupt him, but he had a secret of his own. Growing up in the city, he had mastered a refinement technique designed specifically to purify monster energy and eliminate the risk of transformation. He activated the technique and swallowed the pills. Immediately, the mystical book in his mind began to flip through its pages. It identified the source as an adult iron-tail eagle, containing a trace of ancient blood that would further enhance his strength and vision. The book's evaluation was blunt. The bloodline trace was minimal, but better than nothing. Seeing Leo swallow the pills without changing expression, the abbot suddenly screamed. He called Leo a freak and ordered his men to capture him alive, promising a reward of life-extending soup to whoever brought him down. In the next moment, a dozen bald monks surged out from every corner of the temple. Their eyes glowed with a sinister red light, a clear sign of long-term contamination. It seemed eating monster flesh for years had rotted their souls. Justin was the first to strike, swinging a thick wooden staff with lethal intent. Leo immediately activated his power claw skill, catching the staff in his bare hand. Justin's face twisted in shock, unable to believe what he was seeing. He stammered, asking how Leo could be so strong. Leo simply sneered, noting that he had the monk's daily iron-tail eagle meals to thank for his strength. With a sudden burst of power, Leo's hand crushed through Justin's defenses. Seeing their comrade fall, the rest of the monks charged all at once. Leo moved like a blur, his power claw flashing through the air. In a mere 30 seconds, the shouts and screams in the courtyard fell into a deathly silence. We see the ground littered with the bodies of the monks. Leo turned his gaze toward the abbot, guessing the old man was unable to strike him personally. He suggested a trade. Leo would spare the abbot's life if he revealed the way out. Hearing this, the abbot began to laugh maniacally. He admitted that since Leo hadn't transformed into a monster, he couldn't touch him. But he asked, with a chilling grin, what difference that actually made. He claimed Leo could never leave anyway, noting that if there were an exit, he wouldn't have stayed in this place for so many years. Leo looked at him with genuine confusion, asking what he meant. The abbot explained that the mountain was protected by a grand sealing formation. Once activated, the seal allowed anyone to enter, but absolutely no one could leave. He told Leo to settle in, as he had plenty of time to study him. Leo grew suspicious and asked where the monsters he had been eating actually came from. The abbot let out a cold, dismissive snort. He claimed the temple raised them. This only confused Leo more. He wondered how the abbot had eaten so many monsters without mutating himself. The abbot's expression became truly deranged as he revealed the temple's dark secret. It involved a special recipe known only to them. They mixed the flesh of the temple's youngest disciples with monster remains to brew a medicinal soup. A single spoonful a day kept the transformation at bay. Thousand Buddha Mountain once boasted nearly 400 monks. Now, through this horrific diet, only a handful of them remained alive. A wave of pure nausea washed over Leo, and he nearly gagged at the revelation. But now, every single one of those disciples was dead. Leo realized the abbot could no longer brew his medicine. He told the old man he wasn't afraid of eating monsters, so they would just see who lasted longer. The abbot gestured to the fallen disciples, claiming they would sustain him for over a decade. But, he added, if he could only eat Leo instead, he might finally obtain a body that was immune to the monster transformation. Hearing this, Leo let out a sharp, mocking whistle. He told the abbot to keep dreaming, as eating him would require more skill than the old man possessed. Suddenly, a clever idea struck him. He rushed into the room, grabbed a lighter from the table, and pointed it at the curtains. He asked how many days the abbot would last if his provisions were burned to ash. The abbot's face twisted in rage as he roared, demanding that Leo stop. To be honest, the old man looked truly terrified for the first time. Leo feigned a sudden flinch, letting the lighter slip from his hand. The flames caught instantly, racing up the fabric toward the wooden beams. The abbot screamed that Leo was seeking death, but Leo simply spread his hands in a gesture of complete innocence. He blamed the old monk, claiming that if he hadn't shouted so loudly, Leo's hand never would have slipped. Yes, a total accident, of course. Driven to total madness, the abbot lunged forward. His withered, skeletal palm reached out, aiming straight for Leo's throat with lethal speed. Leo stepped aside to dodge the strike and immediately counterattacked, grabbing the abbot's arm. There was a sickening tearing sound as he pulled. The flesh was ripped away, revealing a grotesque limb underneath covered in the metallic talons of an iron-tail eagle. It was a horrifying sight. Leo recoiled, asking if the old man was running some kind of biological experiment. The abbot slowly turned his head, his eyes vacant and cold. He claimed that to defeat monsters, one must become a monster. He told Leo he should feel honored to witness the power of an arm that had slain countless eagles. Leo spat back that he didn't want any part of that honor. With a quick slide, he maneuvered behind the abbot to target his one remaining human arm. He landed a heavy blow, sending the abbot stumbling back. The old man screamed in fury, but Leo simply smiled, having confirmed his suspicion. It turned out the abbot was nothing more than a half-finished product. Seizing the opening, Leo delivered a brutal kick to the old man's knee. A loud crack echoed through the room as the bone snapped. Before the abbot could even scream, Leo struck again with his power claw. His fingers, sharp as knives, sank deep into the abbot's skull. Leo laughed, a bit of dark adrenaline fueling his triumph over the monster. He mocked the old monk, asking where all that arrogance had gone. Despite the abbot's unnatural speed, the fight was finally over. Leo noted that speed was clearly his weakness, realizing he needed to acquire a movement skill as soon as possible. By now, the entire temple was completely engulfed in a raging inferno. He turned and walked away, bidding a final farewell to the mountain before retracing his steps back home. Strangely, the monsters that had infested the area seemed to have vanished overnight. But in this era, oddities were common, so he didn't dwell on it. After a fair amount of effort, he finally located the rift entrance and dashed through. Upon reaching home, he saw a message from his father, saying they would return tomorrow. After a long night of well-deserved rest, Leo woke up early to wash, only to notice something strange on his left wrist, a small red mole that hadn't been there before. He wondered when it had appeared, as he'd only heard rumors that such marks were signs of a messy private life. He felt a bit insulted, considering his only hobby was reading comics. Then, a memory struck him, back in the library. The woman in red had an identical mark under her eye. He wondered if she was responsible, but before he could investigate the mole further, the front door lock clicked open. He ran out to greet his parents, shouting that he had missed them terribly. To be honest, he truly had. His father, Arthur, looked him up and down with a look of pure shock. He remarked that Leo looked incredibly healthy and full of energy. He asked if Leo had been eating well. Fearing his parents wouldn't understand his monster diet just yet, Leo quickly changed the subject. He claimed he didn't feel any different, but since they were back, he decided to head to school. He had missed far too many classes already. He arrived just in time for the weekly combat training session. His homeroom teacher, Mr. Miller, spotted Leo immediately among the students. The teacher noted how long Leo had been absent and suggested a test to see if his cultivation had improved at all during his time away. The other students began to whisper, mocking him. They reminded each other that Leo had a spiritless physique and was likely destined for a mundane life. Some even joked that he should focus on finding his next meal instead of training. Leo ignored the insults and simply gave his arm a light flick. Blood-red energy condensed at his fingertips and shot toward a testing stone 10 meters away. With a dull thud, the stone vibrated violently. The numerical value on the display instantly jumped to 2,000. The crowd went silent, their eyes wide with disbelief at the impossible score. His power was 3 times higher than an average practitioner. Mr. Miller, stunned, shouted for everyone to be quiet and focus on their own preparations. He told the class to get ready for the actual combat drills, then pulled Leo aside, asking the boy to follow him for a private word. Once they were alone, Mr. Miller demanded a reasonable explanation for this sudden power. Leo took a moment to carefully choose his words. He explained that his family's crematorium had recently processed the carcass of a beast king, and after consuming its essence, he felt a change. He described a warm current surging through his body, claiming that was how he reached this level. Mr. Miller clearly didn't buy the story, but he decided not to press the boy any further. Regardless of the method, being able to cultivate was a blessing, and with his current strength, Leo was now qualified for advanced academy studies. It just so happened that the Spark competition was about to begin, and a top 16 finish would secure his entrance exam eligibility. He told Leo to prepare well. Due to the monster invasions, spatial rifts were appearing everywhere. And while these rifts harbored unknown dangers, they also contained unimaginable resources and opportunities for those brave enough to enter. To fairly distribute these rifts, the Spark competition was established, drawing in the most talented geniuses from every major faction. The competition would be fierce. Leo realized that reaching the top 16 might still be a struggle, so he needed to find higher-tier monsters fast. Over the next few days, he stayed behind closed doors, focusing entirely on raising his cultivation by consuming high-level monster meat. One day, while he was enjoying a meal of Iron-Tail Eagle, the choicest, most tender piece of meat suddenly vanished into thin air. It seemed the heaven-swallowing secret realm was calling to him once again, a place of mystery and untapped potential. But he found himself wondering exactly how he was supposed to re-enter that hidden world. Just as he was pondering this mystery, he accidentally brushed against the red mark on his wrist. In the next second, his surroundings blurred and shifted violently. When he opened his eyes, he found himself back at the mountain temple, though it was now a desolate ruin, charred and broken from the fire he had started. He realized then that the red mark was the key to entering the secret realm at will. Seeing the destruction, he felt a sudden urge to slap himself. His curiosity had certainly cost him. Had he known this place would become his personal property, he never would have set it on fire. But there is no medicine for regret, and he had to live with his choices. Deep down, he knew he had to move forward regardless. His energy successfully broke through to nearly 7 units, and his sharp claw skill reached the level of perfection. In this world, skills have clear tiers. From beginner to mastery, then perfection, and finally the Grandmaster realm. Each level represents a massive leap in power and technique. The difference in power between these tiers is truly night and day. Take his near-perfection sharp claw skill, for instance. It can now manifest as a phantom blood-red palm, allowing him to strike enemies from a distance. Time flew by, and soon the day of the Spark competition arrived. The first test took place before a deep, shimmering spatial rift. As we arrive at the scene, a disdainful voice calls out from behind him. Leo. It seems the world is a small place indeed. Leo turns to see his rival, Julian, walking toward him with a smug expression. Well, Julian sneers. I didn't expect you to qualify for the Spark competition. Did you have to buy your way in? To be honest, it was a weak insult. Julian's face immediately darkens at Leo's calm gaze. A loser has no right to talk. The assessment is starting, and I'll soon show you the true gap between our strengths. Leo simply chuckles. Young Master Julian, I'd be careful about making such big promises. He warns him not to overextend himself, lest he ends up embarrassed. Just then, the proctor steps forward to address the gathered crowd. The rules are simple. They have 1 day to hunt monsters alone, using the monster cores as proof of their score. He warns them that there are no weak monsters here, so anyone wishing to quit should do so now. With that brief explanation, he leaves the young geniuses standing there in stunned silence. Leo doesn't hesitate for a second. He twists the throttle of his bike and charges into the rift. On the other side, we find a vast, sprawling wilderness where clear streams flow gently. Using the enhanced sense of smell from his Moonhowl hound, he detects a pack of about 10 Windchaser wolves hiding in a nearby thicket. He follows the scent immediately. These wolves are rare in the outside world, and he tells himself it would be a waste not to taste their meat. However, the organizers have placed cameras throughout the area to monitor every move the contestants make. He knows he can't risk exposing his secret of consuming monsters, so he has to find another way. After a moment's thought, he picks up a stone and hurls it into the bushes. A sharp, piercing howl immediately rings out through the air. A 3-meter-long Windchaser wolf leaps out, and Leo charges directly toward the thicket. The massive commotion he creates instantly alerts the rest of the pack. One by one, dark shadows emerge, their eyes locked onto him. Leo simply gestures for them to come at him. Completely enraged, the pack of wolves snarls and lunges toward him. Seeing this, he guns the engine, accelerating away while using his keen sense of smell to pinpoint other scattered wolves nearby. Before long, a massive crowd of predators has gathered behind him. With about 50 Windchaser wolves on his tail, Leo suddenly swerves his bike toward a surveillance blind spot outside the testing area. Once he reaches the blind spot, he slows down, gradually letting the pack close the distance until the lead wolf is about to pounce. At that moment, he touches the red mark on his wrist. With a soft shimmer, the wolf simply vanishes into thin air. This sudden disappearance leaves the nearby wolves momentarily stunned. Seizing the opportunity, he quickly pulls the first 6 wolves into his secret realm. The remaining wolves are already exhausted from the long chase. Seeing their fatigue, Leo decides it's time to stop running and finish this. He parks the bike and launches a fierce counterattack, crushing the skulls of the remaining wolves with his bare hands before cleaning up the battlefield. A moment later, he slips into his secret realm to process the meat. These wolves are Spirit Realm Level 3, lean, tough, but quite useful. Their bones can be brewed into a soup that slightly increases chi concentration, while the meat boosts satiety and increases physical speed by 30%. The system's evaluation notes the meat is nearly inedible unless one is starving. It's a bit arrogant, yes, but better than the previous dog food rating. As the sky begins to darken, we know the danger level at night is triple that of the day. Most contestants would be terrified right now. But Leo has his secret realm, where he hides away early to enjoy a hot meal. Others, however, are not quite so fortunate. Elsewhere, we see Julian looking quite fierce. He shouts at a wolf, declaring it will be the stepping stone for his score, and charges forward. It takes him 10 grueling minutes to finally slay the beast. But before he can even catch his breath, 5 more wolves burst from the bushes. Julian starts to panic, but as a son of a prestigious family, he manages to keep his head. He's seen enough of the world to stay focused. He forces his chi to the limit, cutting down 4 more wolves before his energy is completely spent. With no other choice, he scrambles up a tree. He huddles there all night, eventually limping out of the rift the next morning with numb feet. Leo can't help but chuckle at the sight. He asks Julian why he looks so ragged after just one day. Julian ignores the jab and hands his monster cores to the proctors for scoring. The assessment team quickly tallies the results. For this hunt, Leo submits 40 monster cores, which earns him a solid 4th place. Julian also manages to qualify, scraping into the top 16 in the very last spot. It was a close call, to be perfectly honest. Just as everyone assumes the assessment is over, the host steps forward to announce that the top 16 must remain for the next phase. The host dismisses the others to head home, but for those who made the cut, the real challenge is only just beginning. According to the strategy department, a massive beast tide is expected to strike the 3rd realm tomorrow. A lovely prospect, isn't it? The assessment team claims to value talent, so as a precaution, they provide each contestant with a single monster core. This core is meant to help them break through to the next rank, but the announcement immediately sparks a wave of nervous whispers. Consuming a core recklessly can ruin one's future cultivation, and since the grade of these cores is unknown, the risks are high. It's a classic dilemma. Choose between long-term potential or immediate survival. Naturally, no one plans to swallow theirs unless they absolutely have to. Soon, we see the group being transported by black-winged eagles to the 3rd realm, a grim defensive front littered with monster bones. The first phase is simple enough. Travel from their current drop-off point to the finish line and join a combat squad. This time, however, everyone is equipped with a recording device. If it's discarded, they are instantly disqualified from the assessment. For Leo, this means keeping his secret realm hidden won't be easy. He checks his map and begins his trek into the wilderness. After only a few hundred paces, he catches the scent of about a dozen moon-laughing hounds lurking nearby. To be honest, he's actually hungry. Remembering how much they helped his evolution last time, he finds himself salivating before leaping into the branches of a massive tree. He hurls his long blade with lethal precision, decapitating the first 3 hounds that dare to lung out from the shadows. The rest of the pack swarms him, spitting out glowing energy discs, their signature long-range attack. Leo dodges, but the trees behind him are shattered. He continues to swing his blade with rhythmic grace, and 5 minutes later, the entire pack of hounds has been dealt with. But just as he prepares to collect the carcasses, at least 50 more hounds come charging toward him from the thicket. Seeing the overwhelming numbers, Leo immediately turns and sprints in the opposite direction. A tactical retreat, one might call it. Back in the command room, the proctors are laughing, mocking how the boy who looked so tough a moment ago is now running like a stray dog. Meanwhile, just as the lead hound is about to pounce on his back, Leo cleverly blocks the camera with his arm. In that split second of darkness, he pulls the beast into his secret realm, continuing his frantic run while waiting for the next opportunity. As he runs, Leo occasionally turns to strike down a few moon-laughing hounds when they least expect it. Soon, the once massive pack is reduced to only 6 or 7 remaining beasts. Suddenly, a hound with half-red fur tilts its head back and lets out a piercing howl. We notice Leo had his eye on this one for a while. Its aura far exceeds its peers, marking it as an elite-rank pack leader. Deep down, he knows that with his current strength, a direct confrontation offers no hope of victory. However, the continuous pursuit has already drained his stamina. He leaps onto a nearby massive tree to catch his breath, only to realize that the surrounding scenery is entirely unfamiliar. He's lost. He silently curses the hounds for chasing him so relentlessly that he lost his bearings. Just as he settles in, a world-shaking roar erupts from the distance. He turns toward the sound and sees 5 figures in black uniforms clashing with a behemoth nearly 10 meters tall. Leo sharpens his senses and instantly captures 2 distinct, powerful auras. That beast is at least king rank, and the 5 humans facing it are certainly no pushovers either. It turns out to be a king rank expert leading 4 high-level specialists. They move with perfect coordination, surrounding the beast from all sides to lock it in place before launching a fierce assault. A gale beast unleashes a vortex of stone and wind, while a lava beast follows up with scorching flames, withering the nearby vegetation with intense heat. Yet, this king rank monster's reactions are startlingly fast. It moves with fluid grace, managing to dodge every single incoming attack. Seeing this, the lead man lets out a thunderous command to his team. They execute a final pincer maneuver and then vanish in a flash. Perhaps the remaining hounds sensed the king rank beast's presence, because the few that were still chasing Leo have long since fled. He jumps down from the tree and walks toward the fallen beast's carcass. He reaches for the device on his wrist, quickly pulling the massive creature into his secret realm for safekeeping. He jokes to himself about using these king rank materials for a special meal, then pulls out his map to reorient himself and hurries toward the finish line. He has delayed far too long and needs to find his assigned squad before he loses his eligibility for the rest of the assessment. But just as he nears the goal, a hail of bullets begins to rain down on him. He dives behind a giant tree for cover as an arrogant shout echoes from the distance, directed straight at him. Leo cautiously pokes his head out from behind the trunk, only to spot 3 figures lying prone in the distance. They are wearing squad uniforms, and it suddenly clicks. This team is the final hurdle of the assessment. At this point, we see he has only 2 choices: charge through the hail of bullets or surrender and give up entirely. Escaping would be easy enough given his skills, but the clues for the second round are held by those 3 men. He scoffs at the idea of quitting. With a burst of energy, he blurs into motion toward a nearby giant tree. He successfully reaches the base of the high ground where the trio is perched and launches a grappling strike to the ledge. Using his momentum, he leaps upward, ready to strike, only to find the 3 men immediately dropping their weapons and surrendering. They admit defeat, leaving themselves at his mercy, a sudden turn of events that honestly makes Leo laugh out loud. After giving them each a light, mocking tap on the head, he takes the second round information and prepares to depart. It is another map, but this one clearly marks a meeting point where he is expected to converge with other candidates. The catch, of course, is that only one person can move forward from there. He travels through the night until midnight, when he finally finds a specially marked house. To his surprise, the person already there is none other than Julian. Julian is currently being swarmed by 3 high-level beasts, so Leo decides to hop onto a branch to enjoy the show. He mocks Julian, asking why the school's big shot is being schooled by a few monsters. Julian glares back at him. Julian tells Leo not to get cocky and challenges him to a duel once the beasts are dealt with. But just then, an ear-splitting roar echoes from above. We see a massive, 8-meter-tall dark crimson eagle circling in the sky. Leo's sharp senses tell him this creature's power level is far beyond what should be allowed in a standard assessment. Seeing the beast, Julian panics and begins screaming for the examiners, complaining that the difficulty is completely unfair. When no one responds, Leo realizes this is yet another hidden test. He decides it's time to step in. He leaps down in front of Julian, telling him to stop shouting because the examiners aren't coming to save them from this bird. Leo explains that the eagle is a deliberate challenge from the examiners, and while Julian distracts it, Leo plans to consume the monster core to break through his limits. He swallows the core in one gulp, and a second later, we see a surge of raw, untamed power flooding through his entire body. Raising his right hand, he strikes toward the dark crimson eagle with a perfected claw technique, instantly tearing a deep wound into its massive wing. The eagle lets out a pained shriek and stumbles through the air toward the trees. Leo realizes this is the true strength of the advanced rank. Even though he only used 70% of his power, the beast seems critically wounded, yet it manages to stabilize and unleash a massive wind tornado. Leo channels his energy into his long blade, slicing the solid vortex clean in half, a feat that is as impressive as it is terrifying. The resulting shockwave shatters the surrounding trees, leaving Julian, who we see is completely stunned, to gasp that this must be the barrier break technique. It is the rare ability to shatter an enemy's energy with one's own, a high-level skill that supposedly only manifests after reaching the advanced rank. It cannot be taught and relies entirely on luck and talent. Meanwhile, in the control room, the examiners decide to raise the stakes even further. They release 3 more advanced level beasts, but Leo simply chuckles and decides to take the initiative by launching a preemptive strike. His speed has reached its absolute limit, even allowing him to briefly hover in midair. He realizes the core he consumed was a speed-type variety. Not only did it push him to a new realm, but it also granted him the wind float skill, which he uses to weave between the 4 monsters. With his claws and blade working in perfect harmony, it doesn't take long for him to systematically take down all 4 advanced beasts. Once the dust settles, Julian walks over and offers a sincere thank you. Just then, the examiner's eagle reappears to collect them. They are brought back to the rift where the first assessment began, where a woman with short hair is already waiting for their arrival. She introduces herself as Captain Sarah from the assessment team and explains that based on their performance during the Beast Tide, the final selections are made. Only 8 candidates have been chosen for the elite seed squad, and the official list has already been sent to their phones for review. Julian mutters in disbelief that he actually made the cut, but Captain Sarah doesn't say a word, merely signaling for silence with a sharp gesture. She hands each of them a newly developed blood-dissolving pill, explaining that it allows them to replace their monster cores without any physical damage. The potential of their original cores won't vanish. Instead, the power will stack directly onto their new abilities, which is a massive advantage. The Academy will provide you with exclusive training grounds, Sarah explains, urging them to train hard and prepare for the upcoming competitions. As soon as she finishes speaking, the group heads off to train with excitement. After this, they will follow the normal path toward graduation. They will also be free to accept invitations from their preferred colleges, which is exactly why Leo entered this competition, to bring honor to his family. He decides to head home immediately to share the good news with his parents, but just as he is about to leave, Sarah calls out to him. She asks if he wants to represent the entire South City in the 13 Heavens selection, which is set to begin in 1 year's time. Leo's eyes widen in shock as he asks if she's joking, wondering why she would pick a newcomer like him for such a massive event. The selection is a unique tradition of the 13 Heavens. Unlike the Seed Squad, which focuses on combat, this is more of a civic leadership race. It aims to choose representatives for the city. While it starts with observing, the chosen ones slowly begin to wield real political power. If one is lucky, becoming the top authority of the 13 Heavens isn't impossible, though such positions are usually reserved for the elite. Leo can't fathom why Sarah is being so idealistic, but she simply smiles and tells him not to doubt her vision for South City's future. She explains that South City has been suppressed for too long and desperately needs a genius to remind the world that they still exist. She asks if he is willing to let the voice of South City be heard by all of humanity, telling him to think it over and wait for his reply. After she leaves, Leo is left reeling from the impact of the proposal. It's as if someone just asked him if he wanted to become president one day. He shakes his head, deciding it's better to focus on his current tasks first before worrying about such grand, distant ambitions. Returning home, he finds his parents are out, so he enters the heaven-devouring realm and approaches the massive carcass of the earth-hunting Tiger King. A moment later, a glow flashes before his eyes as rows of text appear, identifying the beast as a high-tier prize with soft, abundant meat. The description notes that every part of the beast is useful. Its 5-star liver can be processed into dairy, and its limbs are perfect for medicinal wine. The meat and bones can be stir-fried or slow-stewed to massively boost one's physical stats, though a low-level recipe might ruin the effect. Compared to the dismissive tone it had for other monsters, the Stone Recipe book seems to be taking this Tiger King very seriously indeed. However, as Leo looks closer, he realizes with a sigh that he can't afford a single one of the rare ingredients required to cook it. Left with no other choice, Leo decides on the most basic cooking method, but after cutting a large piece, he realizes a massive amount of meat remains. Without a proper way to store it, these precious cuts of tiger meat will surely spoil, just as he begins to worry about the waste. The Stone Recipe book offers a timely suggestion. If he shares half the meat, the book will provide a dedicated cold storage space. He wonders if such a deal is even possible, but giving up half is certainly better than losing it all. I agree to the split, he decides. The moment the words leave his lips, half the tiger meat vanishes, while the rest is automatically whisked away into the book's storage. With the logistics settled, the meat in his pot is finally ready, and he quickly grabs a piece to taste, which, to be honest, looks delicious. Suddenly, a golden halo appears in his mind, shifting and rearranging itself until he fully absorbs the ancient knowledge hidden within. This is the exclusive skill of the earth-hunting tiger. Following the mental guide, he begins to channel his inner energy into a new formation. As the golden halo manifests once more, Leo feels a surge of power, sensing that his energy circulation speed has at least doubled. In battle, the speed of one's energy flow often dictates victory or defeat, and this skill effectively grants him a temporary boost to his limits. Furthermore, his defensive power has tripled. Combined with his existing abilities, he realizes he might now be invincible among his peers. It's quite a feat to gain a new skill just from a single meal, and he can't help but wonder what the other tiger parts might offer. The potential results of using proper ingredients are staggering, but his thoughts are interrupted by the sound of his parents returning home. He rushes to greet them, proudly announcing that they are looking at the captain of the 13 Cities Seed Squad. Yes, he's that good. He asks for their help in choosing an academy, joking that being this talented is quite a burden, but his father, Jacob, just reaches out. Jacob feels Leo's forehead, wondering if he has a fever or has simply started talking nonsense out of nowhere. Leo quickly explains that it's the truth and suggests they call his teacher to verify the news. Seeing his sincerity, they realize he isn't joking. They immediately head to the kitchen to prepare a celebratory feast, where Leo asks his mother, Mary, about the ingredients he needs. Since Mary has a cousin who graduated in pharmacy, she knows a thing or two. Mom, do you know where I can find cloud mist grass? Mary looks at him with a puzzled expression, noting that such a rare material is usually reserved for master alchemists. Where did you hear that name? Leo smiles, explaining that this competition taught him a great deal and that finding cloud mist grass is his final task before entering the academy. He eagerly asks where it grows and how to harvest it safely. In response, Mary pulls an old, worn book from the back of the wardrobe. This volume contains records of various common medicinal herbs, and as it turns out, the cloud mist grass he's looking for is listed right there. She hands it over for him to study. Leo quickly finishes his dinner and retreats to his room, flipping through the pages with focused intensity. He soon finds the relevant entry. Cloud mist grass is known for its cooling and detoxifying properties, and it thrives in several stable rift spaces. The top recommendation is Rift Space 883 in Bright City. To ensure the herb retains its maximum potency, one must be careful during the harvest. There is no fixed cultivation area, so he'll have to search for it manually, though the book notes it usually grows deep within mountain valleys. He notes the warning that guardian beasts often lurk near these herbs. Satisfied, he gives his parents a quick goodbye and sets off for Bright City. However, when he finally reaches the registration desk for Rift 883, he is met with a sight that leaves him completely stunned, and not in a good way. The staff informs him that because 883 is a zero-risk rift for beginners, it's incredibly popular, and all entry slots are currently fully booked. The earliest available opening isn't for another 7 days. Just as he's losing hope, a familiar voice calls out, asking what he's doing there. He looks up to see Sarah, the star of the Spark Squad. With a wry smile, he explains his predicament to the young woman. He tells her he heard this was a safe place to gain some experience, but he didn't realize the wait list would be quite this long. Hearing this, Sarah turns to the middle-aged man beside her and tells him to wait outside for the day so Leo can take his place. And so, under the slightly resentful gaze of the staff, who clearly think he should have mentioned his connections sooner, Leo enters Rift 883. Once inside the rift, he and Sarah part ways. Thanks to the speed boost from his new skill, he covers a vast distance in mere minutes. In less than 3 minutes, he has already reached a mountain path over 10 miles away, moving with a grace that is almost supernatural. Knowing the value of the materials here is high, he slowly draws his long blade and tosses a stone to draw out any nearby customers. It doesn't take long before a spotted leopard is lured by the noise, lunging directly at him with a ferocity that would terrify a normal person. Leo simply shifts his body to dodge the impact, spinning his blade in a fluid motion as he prepares to give the beast a very warm welcome. As he activates his barrier-breaking ability, the leopard's newly released demonic energy instantly vanishes, and Leo seizes the moment of the beast's confusion. He charges straight for its face, and with just one strike, the leopard is dazed. It instinctively raises its right front paw to block the blow. That paw is the hardest part of its body, but a second later, the creature watches in horror as its limb is severed. It can't even scream yet. Before the pain can even register, the long blade strikes its forehead. Seeing this, several other monsters lurking nearby begin to shrink back in fear. But Leo isn't about to let this opportunity slip away. He becomes a whirlwind of steel, using the extreme speed of his wind-floating steps. He weaves through the pack, his blade dancing until a dozen mirror-level beasts are slain. And just like that, the brief struggle comes to an end. We see him pull 10 small vials from his heaven-swallowing mirror to collect their essence blood before turning his gaze toward the pile of carcasses. He reminds himself that nothing should go to waste. The meat can be stored in his mirror for future meals, a practical choice, to be sure. He's also heard that leopard claws are quite valuable, and the pelts and tusks of the others will fetch a good price. So, he begins his cleanup. After tidying the battlefield, he resumes his search for the cloud mist grass, and soon, a plant nearly half a meter tall catches his eye in the distance. He quickly pulls out the book Mary gave him to cross-reference. Confirming it's the right herb, he prepares his tools to begin the harvest. Suddenly, a gruff voice echoes from behind him, mocking his bravery for trying to steal something that supposedly belongs to the boys. Leo spins around to find 4 burly men approaching him rapidly, all clad in thick leather armor and armed with machetes and long spears. Judging by their gear, they appear to be monster hunters. In a world overrun by beasts, relying solely on official forces simply isn't realistic. Since many practitioners need a way to make a living after graduation, professions like monster hunting have naturally emerged to fill the gap. One man with a prominent scar on his face looks Leo up and down with pure disdain, clearly unimpressed by what he sees. He labels Leo a naive student and warns him to leave the grass and get lost, or else they'll be forced to teach him a lesson about the real world. Leo doesn't bother with a verbal reply. Instead, he channels his energy and swings his long blade toward the group with startling precision. The scarred man quickly raises his spear to parry, but against the extreme speed of the wind-floating steps, his movements are a beat too slow. With a thunderous boom, the scarred man is struck by a crimson light, sent reeling by a force he clearly didn't expect from a naive student. The impact sends him flying like a broken kite, hurtling backward until he is pinned violently against a massive tree behind him. His lackeys scramble to pull him down, and the scarred man falls to his knees with a heavy thud, begging for mercy. He claims they were blind to Leo's strength and offers the cloud mist grass as a peace offering. Leo simply raises an eyebrow. He tells them they can leave, provided they hand over everything of value and harvest the herb for him first. The scarred man quickly orders his men to comply, even stripping off their leather armor to satisfy Leo's demands. After they depart, we see Leo continue his search through the valley, eventually gathering 5 full bundles of the precious grass. A thought occurs to him. Why not transplant some into his heaven-swallowing mirror, so he'll never run out of seasoning for his stews? He sets to work immediately, and after 3 hours of careful labor, the transplanting process is finally complete. Elsewhere, we find Sarah being cornered by a dozen men, their leader wearing a vulgar smirk as he demands her surrender. He makes a crude promise to treat her well if she serves him, but Sarah's expression only darkens with cold fury. She sidesteps and decapitates one of the lackeys in a single motion before chanting the incantation for her Vajrawal technique. Her blade becomes a blur of motion as she charges the group, her strike forcing the attackers back in a desperate retreat. She manages to cut down 4 more of them before her strength wavers and her blade finally slips to the ground. Leo decides it's time to test the power of his Heaven War style, using his maximum speed to vanish and reappear before Sarah. He mocks the attackers, calling them nothing but brats from the Sakura Alliance, while Sarah stares at him in complete shock. She quickly recovers and urges Leo to run, fearing he can't handle so many opponents. Leo just closes his eyes with a sigh. He jokingly asks her to let him finish his heroic entrance, reminding her that as members of the Spark Squad, their flame never dies. The leader, feeling ignored, loses his patience and swings his blade at Leo, who casually catches the weapon with his bare claw. With a sharp crack, the blade snaps in two, and Leo immediately reaches out to seize the man's arm in a vice-like grip. With a surge of strength, he crushes the limb before drawing his own blade to end the man's life with a swift strike. The leader collapses instantly, unable to even let out a scream, while his remaining men quickly tighten their formation. Leo gives a cold laugh, noting their sudden bravery, and decides to see exactly what they are capable of. He activates his movement technique, flickering through the crowd so fast they can't even track his shadow before they are cut down. As Sarah recovers some of her strength, she steps forward to thank Leo for saving her life in such a dire moment. She invites him home to properly repay the debt, while Leo considers that he still needs the Wind Thunder root to finish his recipe. Realizing Sarah's family might have the connections to find it, he waves off her gratitude, claiming he didn't help just for a reward. However, he adds that if she insists, she could help him locate the Wind Thunder root, ideally finding some already in stock. Even if they don't have it, a lead on its location would suffice. Sarah agrees immediately, promising to start the search upon her return. Leo glances around and decides they have spent enough time in the rift, signaling that it is finally time to head back. Not long after they exit the rift, Sarah sends over several pounds of the rare Wind Thunder root as promised. With the ingredients for his recipe finally gathered, he is eager to get home and finally taste that tiger meat stew. He recalls his parents mentioning that his teacher, Mr. Miller, wanted to discuss his college applications and future prospects. Since Mr. Miller is the most respected advisor in the city, Leo heads straight to the school office upon his arrival. Leo announces his return, but Mr. Miller looks up with a face full of anger, calling him a rascal for staying away so long. The teacher complains that the top 5 academies have been pestering him constantly, reminding Leo of how prestigious these schools truly are. He scolds Leo for not cherishing such a rare opportunity, while Leo just gives a sheepish grin, knowing his teacher is the ultimate authority. He flatters the old man, acknowledging that his guidance on which path to take is the only one that matters. Mr. Miller suggests that the Vermilion Academy is the best choice, as it sits within the 7th realm near a massive volcano. That region is a paradise for fire attributes and is home to the famous immortal fire ducks, a delicacy Leo would surely appreciate. He mentions a tradition where the top-ranked freshman earns a trip to the immortal volcano, a prize that catches Leo's attention. To put it simply, the goal is to find an immortal fire duck that likes you enough to sign a contract, and if you have incredible luck, you might even snag a King Tier 1. With a beast like that, as long as you aren't killed instantly, you can always escape. After all, these ducks are famous for their sheer speed and ferocity. Being dual attribute creatures of wind and fire, they aren't just fast. They have incredible survival instincts, making them far more prestigious than something like a black crimson eagle. College is quite different from high school, as it requires real-world experience, and having such a mount would certainly be convenient for our young hero. As Leo listens intently, Mr. Miller continues his explanation, revealing another key reason for choosing Vermilion Academy, the chance to learn their legendary techniques. Specifically, he refers to the Vermilion Needle technique, a domineering skill that allows for the regeneration of severed limbs, a truly life-saving ability once mastered. At a high enough level, it ignores physical limitations to regrow lost parts, providing top-tier survivability that becomes even more potent when paired with an immortal fire duck. Combined with Leo's unique abilities, it would take someone an entire realm above him to pose a real threat, a thought that makes his eyes sparkle with sudden excitement. He realizes that only masters of the Mystic or King realms could actually hurt him then, making his decision final. He is definitely going to Vermilion Academy. Hearing this, Mr. Miller pulls a blade from under his desk, presenting it as a graduation gift with 3 empty socket positions pre-installed for future upgrades. The teacher explains that Leo will understand what those sockets are for once he gains more experience, before dismissively telling the boy to get going now that he knows his path. Leo accepts the long blade with great solemnity and leaves the school, returning home for a brief, heartwarming reunion with his parents before heading to his private sanctuary. Once inside the heaven-swallowing rift, he follows the recipe to prepare a feast of king-tier stewed meat, and soon, a rich, mouth-watering aroma fills the entire space. The scent is enough to make anyone drool, and after devouring the meal like a hungry wolf, Leo feels a sudden, massive surge of power coursing through his body. He clenches his fist and throws a heavy punch, watching in delight as the shockwave sends nearby rocks tumbling away, a clear sign of his growing strength. To be honest, his physical constitution had always been his greatest weakness due to years of malnutrition, but that seems to be changing rapidly now. That night, he dreams of the woman in red again, and things even progress to a passionate kiss. However, just as he hopes to take the next step, he is jolted awake. Upon waking, he discovers a new technique has appeared in his mind called the Sun-Moon Wheels, a unique method centered around battling alongside avian beasts. This technique requires taming 2 birds and using a secret method to refine them, essentially turning them into a pair of flying platforms for the user. By placing them under his feet and driving them with his energy, he can fly. Naturally, the higher the quality of the birds, the faster he can travel through the sky. The more energy he provides, the more these birds can shift into a combat stance to assist him. Leo realizes that all of this is somehow connected to the mysterious woman in red from the ice coffin. Since she appeared, he hasn't faced any real danger. Instead, he seems to constantly stumble into incredible benefits. The first time was at Mount Buddha, where he gained control over the rift, and the second time was just now, when he received the Sun-Moon Wheels technique out of thin air. It seems perfect for when he finally catches an immortal fire duck. He decides then and there to master the technique before school starts. Soon, the day of enrollment arrives, and we see that Vermilion Academy has sent several adult immortal fire ducks to various cities to collect the new students. From South City, only 13 students made the cut. This is the first time many of them have ever been this high in the air. Naturally, they can't hide their excitement as they lean over to enjoy the scenery rushing by below. However, just as they think they are about to arrive at the academy, their mount suddenly loses altitude. With a violent roll, the duck dives toward the ground. This sudden change catches everyone off guard, and they frantically activate their various skills, using the dense forest canopy below to cushion their fall. Leo, however, simply steps onto the air and walks down calmly. Just then, a mocking voice drifts over from behind them, asking which city these unlucky losers crawled out of. The voice sneers, asking if this grand entrance was designed specifically to make everyone laugh. Leo turns to see a bald young man named Mike approaching with a group of followers. The South City students, already frustrated by their undignified landing, clench their fists in anger. They are ready to argue, but Leo steps forward to stop them. He calmly explains they are from South City and that the sudden dive was just an accident. He politely asks which city the newcomers are from, but Mike just looks him up and down with utter disdain. To be honest, he isn't being very welcoming. Mike scoffs, realizing they are from the city that is about to be kicked out of the top 13. Leo looks back at them with a cold, steady gaze. He advises them to leave immediately, warning that if he loses control of his strength, it would be quite embarrassing for fellow students to get hurt. Feeling insulted by Leo's calm confidence, Mike's face darkens instantly. He pulls back a heavy fist, ready to strike our hero. But just as the punch is about to land, an angry female voice rings out, calling Mike by name. She warns him that if he dares to move a finger, she will beat him senseless. Everyone turns to see Sophie walking toward them with fire in her eyes. Sophie approaches quickly with Luna following close behind. Leo is genuinely surprised to see them both here at the academy. Luna simply shrugs, explaining they followed his lead and applied to Vermilion just to keep him company. How thoughtful of them. Leo turns to Sophie, asking how she knows Mike. She explains that he is actually a distant relative of hers. They grew up together, but she insists Leo shouldn't hold back. He should handle Mike however he likes, without any mercy. Leo rubs his chin thoughtfully. He reminds Mike that he just insulted everyone from South City, which is quite a bold move. He proposes that if Mike loses, he must apologize to everyone. Mike, not being the brightest, agrees without a second thought. Luna leans in and whispers to Leo, asking why he doesn't just crush the guy, since Mike is like an aunt to him. She wonders why he needs such a formal excuse. Leo ignores her, asks the crowd to clear out, and unstraps his blade. He hands the weapon to Sophie. Seeing this, Mike roars and activates a technique that causes his muscles to bulge with power. As golden light covers Mike's body, Leo moves with a blur, his hand clamping firmly onto Mike's head with perfect precision. He slams Mike up and down dozens of times before finally stopping. Mike, foaming at the mouth, gasps that Leo has no honor. Mike demands a fair, head-on fight. But just then, the cry of an immortal fire duck draws everyone's attention to the sky. We look up to see a massive bird circling down toward the group. Standing firmly on its back is a middle-aged man. He notes that everyone seems to have arrived and introduces himself as a teacher at the academy. His name is Professor Arthur. He welcomes them to Vermilion Academy, but warns that formal admission won't be quite so simple. There is one final trial to complete. You see, the frontline war is escalating, and the school staff have all been deployed. They won't return for at least 3 days, leaving the academy's defenses dangerously thin during their absence. There is a risk of monsters from the front line sneaking in, so he needs these new students to guard the school. With that, Professor Arthur vanishes into the sky. The crowd erupts. They came for an education, only to find the teachers are gone. It feels less like being a student and more like being a security guard, but we have to wonder if this is truly a coincidence. The timing is almost too perfect. They arrive, and suddenly the front lines are in trouble. It clearly smells like a setup, though we can only guess what game is being played. Leo, however, is far too hungry to bother with deep thoughts. After the long journey, his stomach is growling, so he simply heads deeper into the academy. The others follow his lead. Following the signs, we soon find ourselves at the academy cafeteria. But instead of a bustling kitchen, there is only a single, white-haired old man hunched over a broom. The old man sighs, claiming he is the only old bone left in the school. If he weren't so elderly, he says, he'd be at the front lines slaying monsters himself. If Leo had any doubts before, he is now entirely certain. This so-called emergency mission is nothing more than a test carefully orchestrated by the academy. High above, Professor Arthur watches the scene unfold with a playful smirk dancing on his lips. To be honest, he seems to be enjoying this a bit too much. He muses that simply guarding the school might be too easy for these freshmen. Perhaps an appetizer is in order, something like 2,000 low-level monsters. He decides to have the old janitor keep Leo busy. After all, Leo's strength is far from ordinary, and if he steps in too early, the test loses all its meaning. Back in the cafeteria, the old man suddenly drops his broom. His demeanor shifts instantly as he moves with surprising speed to Leo's side. He warns Leo to stay put and remain quiet, no matter what happens outside. Leo is about to ask for an explanation when the air is suddenly filled with a terrifying sound. The distant, rhythmic roars of a monster horde echo through the air. Panicked, the other students immediately bolt toward the academy's outer perimeter to see the threat. The old man suddenly grabs Leo by the collar and leaps onto the high city wall in a single bound. "Students," he shouts, "the monsters are attacking. Protect the academy." Looking down, the students can't help but feel a bit speechless at the old man's overly dramatic acting. Leo clears his throat, realizing he needs to step up. He tells the old man that while he won't fight, he can at least offer a plan. The old man nods with a smile, curious to see how the boy leads. Leo notes the western terrain is too complex for monsters to enter easily, so they can leave it unguarded. He turns to Luna, telling her to take 50 melee fighters to the south. He then instructs Sophie to take 30 long-range attackers to support Luna's position. As for the rest of his friends from South City, they are tasked with holding the east. Finally, he looks at Mike and asks if he can handle the northern gate. When facing a common enemy, unity is the most important rule of all, even for rivals. Despite his recent beating, Mike grinds his teeth and nods, agreeing to the task. Meanwhile, high in the sky, Professor Arthur begins to frown at this development. If Leo organizes them this efficiently, the internal chaos script Arthur had planned will go to waste. Since they aren't following his script, he decides to raise the stakes. He orders 10 elite-level monsters to be released into the fray. It seems he is determined to push these students to their absolute limits by using the Academy's lures. The crates are opened, and we see Arthur's plan in motion. He believes these little ones have been comfortable for too long and need a real trial. To become true talents, they must face the fire. Meanwhile, Leo stands atop the Academy's highest spire, activating his eagle eye to monitor the battlefield. He watches the 4 directions closely, and before long, a swarm of massive toxic king wasps appears from the south, their wings buzzing like war drums. The venom of these wasps is notoriously cruel, causing an unbearable itch that lasts for 49 days unless treated with a very specific medicine. The second effect, however, is a true nightmare for the men. Let's just say it puts certain personal activities on hold for at least half a month. Leo looks down at the boys in the ranks and shouts a warning for everyone to find cover immediately as the toxic king wasps are closing in. He orders the long-range attackers to suppress them first. Hearing this, Sophie tells the group to channel their energy into their weapons for maximum impact. But there are simply too many of them. Despite their best efforts to defend, several students are stung, and the southern line is soon filled with chaos. The air is thick with the sounds of wailing and misery. One poor boy even breaks down in tears, shouting that he'd rather fight to the death than endure this. Watching from a distance, Leo can't help but let out a small laugh. He remarks to the old man that this particular test is truly devious. The old man just chuckles darkly in response. It takes the students nearly an hour of desperate fighting before the last of the wasps is finally cleared away. But there is no time to breathe, as the elite lava mirror beasts released by Arthur are already closing in on the academy's perimeter. Before Leo can even shout a warning, Luna and Marcus leap from the city walls, their figures seemingly suspended in the air for a brief, gravity-defying moment. Luna charges straight at one of the beasts with a fierce cry, telling the monster exactly where it can go. To be honest, she sounds quite terrifying. She swings her long blade with expert precision, striking the beast's neck and sending it crashing to the ground. Meanwhile, Marcus is preparing his own move. His eyes suddenly erupt with a brilliant golden light, firing two sci-fi-like cross lasers that sear through anything they touch, leaving only scorched earth behind. Not wanting to be outdone, the other students activate their strongest techniques to clash with the remaining elite monsters in a desperate struggle. The brutal battle rages on throughout the entire night. It isn't until the first light of dawn breaks that the final beast finally collapses into a pool of blood. Exhausted, everyone collapses onto the ground. It is at this exact moment that Professor Arthur finally returns with his entourage, looking remarkably refreshed. He praises the students for defending the school during its crisis, noting that showing such responsibility in the face of danger is a vital lesson. Arthur continues, telling them that such effort deserves a reward, so he has decided to grant each of them a Mystic Grade Monster Core. However, for those students who have already found their own path and don't feel they need a core, he offers them a different choice altogether. They can choose to exchange it for a special opportunity. While others have to catch fire ducks by hand, Leo realizes his heaven-swallowing secret realm gives him a massive advantage. He can simply toss the ducks inside and process them at his leisure. Realizing this, he lets out a faint, knowing smile. He jokes that if he brings out too many, they shouldn't get jealous. Meanwhile, the others finish collecting their cores and techniques. Then, with a wave of Professor Arthur's hand, a massive adult undying fire duck dives down from the sky to meet them. He invites everyone headed for Fire Duck Mountain to hop on. Before long, a magnificent, towering city appears before our eyes. Arthur presses a card-like device against the gate, and a crisp electronic voice rings out, welcoming the Level 2 instructor home. The automated system wishes him prosperity and a swift breakthrough to higher realms, but Arthur is in no mood for pleasantries. He cuts it off, telling the machine to stop babbling and let the freshman in. A moment later, the heavy gates groan open. Arthur's tone turns serious as he explains that Fire Duck Mountain is actually a massive, fragmented world. It isn't just for their academy. People from international alliances are there too. We learn that while they hold the advantage, that advantage only applies to their specific territory. Soon, someone arrives to hand out maps to the group. He warns them to stay within the mapped areas. Outside those borders, they are on their own. And of course, time is limited. Whether they can actually catch a fire duck depends entirely on their own strength. With that, he leaves them to explore. The group enters the passage one by one. As Leo steps through, he feels a wave of dizziness, followed by a sudden, searing heat. When his vision clears, he sees a world of crimson. Even the rivers flowing nearby are the color of molten lava. He quickly pulls out his map to check his position, only to realize that he has ended up somewhere quite unexpected. He realizes he's drifted 500 kilometers away from the Academy's controlled zone. Even if he pushes his speed to the limit, it will take half a day just to get back. As he's nursing this particular headache, a strange, chattering language reaches his ears. Looking up, we see three figures approaching him, dressed in the distinct style of the Sakura Alliance. Leading the group is a pale young man, followed closely by two lackeys. When they spot Leo, they stop in their tracks, clearly surprised to find anyone else out here. A flicker of arrogance crosses their faces. One of the followers, a blond man with blue eyes, waves Leo over with a dismissive gesture as if he's merely a local guide. He demands to know if Leo is from the 13 cities and, more importantly, if he knows exactly where they are. To be honest, his tone could use some work. Leo looks at them and feels a sudden, familiar itch in his hands. Usually, he's surrounded by classmates and friends, making it difficult to really let loose. But these guys, they've practically delivered themselves to his doorstep. He decides that a little entertainment is exactly what he needs to pass the time. Without a word, he lashes out with his claws, hooking them firmly into the blonde lackey's shoulder. A sickening crunch follows as the bone shatters instantly. The man screams in agony, his face twisting as he begs his leader for help. "Lord Julian," he wails, "please, save me." Julian responds with a sharp slap to the man's face, telling him to shut up. He promises that his father will heal him once they return home. If they return, that is. Before the sentence is even finished, Leo ends the man's suffering, sending a spray of blood across Julian's face. For a moment, the arrogant leader looks genuinely rattled. Julian quickly signals his other subordinate, who draws a Western-style demonic longsword. The air grows heavy as the man prepares to strike. A blood-red sword aura erupts from the blade. Leo's eyes light up at the sight. He's never been entirely sure about the nature of his own power. He hadn't expected to find someone else using the same blood-colored energy today. He immediately swings his claws, revealing the invisible threads of blood hidden in the air. When the three of them see those crimson lines, they freeze in disbelief. Julian narrows his eyes, his brow furrowing in deep suspicion. He asks how someone from the 13 cities could possess the attributes of his blood clan. He even wonders aloud if Leo is his father's secret illegitimate son. Leo isn't exactly flattered. He snaps back, telling Julian that he's a proud, legitimate citizen of the 13 cities, and mocks the idea that this power is exclusive to them. He even suggests that the Blood Clan actually learned their tricks from his own ancestors. Enraged by the insult to his master, the lackey swings his blade downward. He screams that Leo must be tired of living. But Leo doesn't flinch. Instead, he stands his ground and activates his barrier-breaking ability. Seizing the fleeting opening, Leo's claw clamps onto the man's head. With a single, brutal squeeze, the skull shatters like glass. And that, as they say, was that. After watching both of his followers get torn apart, Julian is completely stunned. His legs give out, and he collapses to the ground, stammering that Leo cannot touch him. He claims his father is a count in the Western Blood Clan, a family of ancient lineage and immense power. If Leo harms him, he warns, death will follow immediately. Leo can't help but chuckle at the sight. This boy is the definition of a spoiled child, bold and arrogant as long as his bodyguards were standing. Now that his protection is gone, he's resorted to hiding behind his family name. Leo looks down at him coldly and asks if he actually wants to live. Julian explains that certain gems would allow for better control over weapon components. Hearing this, Leo instinctively looks at the empty sockets on his long blade. He falls into deep thought. These gems are designed to strengthen the connection with one's weapon and speed up the flow of energy. To be honest, it's a tempting upgrade. He recalls seeing powerful figures on television who used blood chi gems to remotely control their weapons from a distance. It was a skill he certainly wanted. He demands that Julian point out the location of these gems on the map. Not daring to hesitate for even a second, Julian pinpoints a precise location. However, the moment Julian looks up, Leo's wrist flicks with practiced ease. A single blade strike ends the young noble's life right then and there. We must remember that this area is far beyond the Academy's reach. Leo now faces two choices. Head toward the blood chi gems immediately, knowing the road will be dangerous, which is why his teachers insisted on staying within safe zones, or stick to the original plan of capturing the Fire Crows. The second option is much safer, of course, but the thought of those nearby blood chi gems is hard to ignore. It's a classic dilemma of greed versus caution. Deep down, he knows he'll regret leaving empty-handed. After standing in silence for a long while, he finally makes his decision. He will capture the Fire Crows first. Once the original mission is complete, he'll go hunting for that gem. By then, his sun and moon cultivation technique should be fully mastered. With that power, he could attack or retreat as needed. If he encounters a threat he can't handle, he'll simply run. As for the three bodies, he doesn't let them go to waste, storing them away to be used as bait for demonic beasts later. Then, he sets off toward the Fire Crow nesting grounds. After traveling for quite some time, we finally see the cavern marked on his map. At the entrance, Leo pauses to take a careful sniff of the air. He detects the faint, sharp scent of sulfuric lava. While such a smell is perfectly normal on Vulcan Mountain, the concentration here seems unusually high. A sudden thought strikes him. Could there be a guardian beast protecting this place? The aura he senses feels remarkably powerful, even from here. But he shrugs it off. As the saying goes, he's already come this far, and wealth, like life itself, often belongs to the bold. If things go south, he can always just run. Since the rocks on Vulcan Mountain are naturally infused with flames, Leo picks one up from the ground to use as a makeshift torch before stepping quietly into the dark cavern. Almost immediately, we see two young fire crows nearby, feeding on blood. Right beside them sits a blood chi gem. He is overjoyed. It seems luck is finally on his side. Not only has he found the young fire crows, but he stumbled upon the gem as well. He can't help but wonder if the heavens are being a bit too kind to him. He had done his homework before coming here. Adult fire crows are incredibly powerful, and obtaining one usually requires a desperate, bloody struggle. Even if you catch one, they are notoriously difficult to tame. However, capturing a hatchling is much easier. He once heard of a senior student who lured a young fire crow away with nothing but a handful of grass. But what should he use as bait? As he ponders this dilemma, he suddenly remembers the Tiger King meat. He had been wanting to test whether demonic meat is truly inedible or if his special recipes could make it safe for everyone to consume. If the latter is true, the implications would be staggering. To be honest, it would change the world. The current power structure would crumble. Families who built their wealth on rare blood essences might see their assets vanish overnight. Furthermore, Those who hold these secret recipes would suddenly become an elite, unreachable class. It would also give him a perfect cover for his own rapid growth. Thinking of this, he nearly wants to kick himself. Julien and his 2 followers were such perfect specimens for his experiments. If he had simply tossed them into his secret realm, he could have studied the effects at his leisure. But there's no use crying over spilled milk. He tells himself to be less impulsive next time. Following the logic that one must bait the hook to catch the fish, he pulls out a large slab of meat. From his inner realm, he uses a small knife to cut it into bite-sized pieces before tossing them toward the birds. He's feeding them king-tier meat, hoping these little ones can handle the potency. The 2 young fire crows look at the sudden snacks with curiosity, sniffing them cautiously. Once they confirm it's safe, they begin to feast. Leo watches them like a hawk, waiting for any sign of a negative reaction to the demonic meat. When nothing happens, he wonders if the dose is simply too low. He continues slicing the meat, slowly closing the distance as he feeds them. The young fire crows are so focused on the delicious meal that they lose all track of their surroundings. Once he is only 3 meters away, a blood-red halo suddenly manifests behind him. In an instant, 2 chains forged from golden runes shoot forward with lethal precision. The chains lock the 2 young fire crows firmly in place. Leo is momentarily stunned. He had intended to follow the Academy's standard taming method, but the green moon will suddenly activate it on its own. It's a strange turn of events, as though the technique is operating with a mind of its own. Suddenly, a faint voice echoes in his ear. Leo, you are too slow. His heart trembles. This is clearly the voice of the woman from the ice coffin, appearing once again at the most unexpected moment. He demands to know who she is and why she keeps calling him that name, but he receives no further response. It seems he'll eventually have to return to his secret realm to investigate her. For now, he turns his attention back to the birds. He tentatively circulates the sun-moon wheel technique, and the chains binding the young fire crows vanish instantly. To his surprise, the 2 hatchlings rush to his feet, transforming into streaks of gold and red flame. He looks at them with a hint of hesitation. Let's go, he says. No sooner have the words left his mouth than a massive surge of power erupts from beneath his feet. Caught off guard, he leans back as the world around him blurs into streaks of light. When his vision finally clears, he finds himself standing steadily outside the cavern. With speed like this, he feels as though the entire world is within his reach. He tries to push for even more speed, but a pitiful, aggrieved cry comes from beneath him. He realizes his mistake immediately. These little ones are still far too young. They lack the stamina and strength of an adult fire crow for sustained, high-intensity flight. Suddenly remembering the blood chi gem he left behind, he rushes back into the depths of the cavern. He quickly reaches the gem, picks it up, and fits it into the pre-cut slot on his long blade. As the socketing is completed, the sword begins to glow with a faint, pulsing red light. But just as he prepares to leave the cave, a violent aura erupts outside. It is a familiar, terrifying pressure, the same kind he felt from the Tiger King. Then, a calm, authoritative voice calls out. I am Professor Arthur from the Phoenix Academy. If you're a student, come out now. I know you have the Fire Crow hatchlings. The voice continues, but those are the king's offspring. The Academy won't let you suffer a loss. Let's talk, or we're coming in. Hearing it's someone from the Academy, Leo is nearly moved to tears. He knew he couldn't defeat a king-tier beast alone. Regardless of how it happened, he felt his life was finally safe. He looked down at the 2 little fire crows and told them it was time to go, as their parent had arrived. It seemed their fate together had come to an end. Stepping out, he immediately saw a massive fire crow glaring at him with pure, murderous intent. Beside the beast stood a man of elegant temperament. Leo hurried forward to greet him, introducing himself as a new student named Leo. Professor Arthur pulled him behind his back, explaining to the beast that it was all a misunderstanding and his student hadn't realized the hatchlings belonged to the king. He told the king he could take his children now. The Fire Crow King cried out emotionally, commanding his children to return to his side at once. However, 3 minutes passed, and the 2 little crows acted as if they hadn't heard a thing, keeping their heads down as they searched the ground for something. They looked exactly as they did when hunting for monster meat earlier. Arthur looked at the Fire Crow King with a strange expression, asking if these were truly his children. That question hit like a physical blow. A rare look of ashamed rage appeared on the king's avian face as he snapped at the 2 hatchlings. He barked at them to listen, warning them that this outsider wanted to capture them as pets. Seeing this, Arthur couldn't help but burst into laughter. He joked that the king's children were absolute geniuses. He reminded the beast that while he promised to return them, he couldn't force them to leave if they refused. It seemed they were destined to become spirit beasts of the Phoenix Academy after all. To be honest, the king looked like he wanted the earth to swallow him whole. The professor turned to Leo, noting that the boy certainly had talent if he could kidnap the king's children using nothing but food. Fuming with rage, the Fire Crow King stormed off, shouting that he had raised them for nothing and telling them to get out of his sight forever. Once the king was gone, Arthur patted Leo on the shoulder. He told him to visit the Block C teaching building later to collect growth materials for the hatchlings. With those words, the professor vanished in a blur of speed. Not long after, the hunting window at Fire Crow Mountain officially came to a close. The freshmen were teleported back to the Phoenix Academy. The first thing Leo did upon his return was find a secluded corner to enter the heaven-devouring realm. Following his memory, he returned to the ice coffin with the two little crows. He stood before the woman in the red robe, his mind filled with questions. He introduced himself as Leo, recalling how the first time they met, her body had been covered in strange, talisman-like markings. He asked what those were, what her story was, and most importantly, why she insisted on calling him by that intimate name. Suddenly, that familiar female voice echoed, explaining that there were indeed seals binding her until he released them. She had been frozen for a long time. She explained that while trapped, she had sworn to the heavens that whoever broke her seal would become her husband, and yet, her lips didn't move at all. Leo's eyes widened in shock. He wondered who on earth he was actually talking to and begged the voice to stop playing tricks on him. He nervously joked that while his family ran a crematorium, they only handled monsters, and he wasn't brave enough for ghosts. He waited for a reply. But suddenly, the voice vanished completely. No matter how much he questioned the air, there was only silence, leaving him with no choice but to turn away. As we see him leave the area of the ice coffin, the two little fire crows immediately rushed over, affectionately rubbing their heads against his legs. He gave them a faint, appreciative smile as he watched them settle in. Before long, they had devoured an entire piece of monster meat. At that moment, a vibrant red light suddenly erupted from the two little crows. Their bodies began to swell right before our eyes, doubling in size in an instant as they underwent a rapid transformation. Even their aura grew significantly stronger. Leo could clearly sense that the energy fluctuations within them had reached an entirely new level. They had actually broken through to the mystic rank. Previously, when he used the Sun Moon wheels, these two little guys only had a few seconds of power. Now that they had reached the mystic rank, their strength had surely increased. Eager to test this, he immediately began chanting the Sun Moon wheel mantra. The flames around the little crows surged violently, and they quickly transformed into two wheels of blazing fire. As they hovered beneath his feet, he excitedly urged them to show him their true power. With a sharp whistling sound, they took off. The flaming wheels beneath him suddenly exerted immense force, carrying him straight up into the sky as he steered them through the air. He spent a full hour soaring around, yet the little crows remained high-spirited with no signs of exhaustion. He couldn't help but smile to himself. It seemed he had more than enough energy to keep this up for quite a while. He gently stroked the two little crows and decided to name them the Sun Moon Wheels. Being the king's offspring, they were quite intelligent. They nodded in agreement. After sharing a hearty meal with them, Leo set off for the Block C teaching building to find Professor Arthur. Arriving at Arthur's office, he knocked softly and stepped inside, announcing that he had come to collect the promised materials. Arthur looked up and handed him a card, explaining that everything was listed inside, and he should take it to the logistics department later. Arthur then mentioned that since Leo was the captain of the Spark team and would compete in October, he wondered if he'd like to meet some foreign contestants beforehand. Without a second thought, Leo agreed. Arthur stood up, noting he knew he hadn't misjudged him, and told him to go grab his undying fire crows. He reminded Leo those birds were his lifesavers, and once ready, they would head to the outer realm. Leo gave a quick nod of affirmation. He turned back to collect the two little crows and soon returned to the teaching building as planned. When Arthur saw the pair following behind him, he looked absolutely stunned. He hadn't expected the little guys to break through to the mystic rank in just a single day. Quite impressive, really. Arthur remarked that Leo should be able to keep up with his speed now. Leo gave a light cough and summoned the Sun Moon Wheels. The two little crows flashed and transformed once more into blazing wheels, settling steadily beneath his feet as he prepared to move out. With a slight shift of his feet, he controlled the flaming wheels to follow closely behind Arthur. They flew for over 20 minutes toward the assembly point. As they reached the outskirts, Arthur turned and shouted for him to jump onto his own fire crow, as those wheels were a bit too flashy. Leo leaped onto Arthur's fire crow, and they landed smoothly on the platform. Arthur then introduced Leo as their junior, here to gain some experience. That single sentence immediately caused a stir. Before the students from Phoenix Academy could even speak, the foreign faces nearby started laughing. They mocked the academy, asking if they had run out of people since they were sending out a first-year freshman to join them. They joked that he must think this was a game, or perhaps he had offended someone powerful and was being sent here as a punishment. Now, Leo wasn't the type to let someone call him useless to his face. He suddenly drew the long blade from his back and pointed it at them. He coldly asked which dog had been barking just now. At that, a young man with blonde curly hair stepped forward with a frozen expression. The man was absolutely stunned, wondering who on earth gave him the courage to speak to them like that. His words immediately provoked the seniors from Phoenix Academy. One of them challenged the blonde man, Marcus, asking if he was looking for a fight. The senior asked what he meant by bullying their junior. Watching them stand up for him, Leo felt a genuine sense of belonging to the academy. He signaled for his seniors to stay calm for a moment. Then, under the watchful eyes of everyone present, he let out a sharp, clear whistle. In the very next second, everyone felt the intense heat of two blazing fireballs rapidly approaching the platform at incredible speed. While the crowd stood there in a daze, Leo had already risen 30 feet into the air on his Sun Moon wheels. He called out to Marcus, asking if he had the nerve to back up his talk. He challenged the blonde man to a duel, offering to show him what true power actually looked like. To be honest, Leo was never one for subtle introductions. Beside them, Arthur immediately barked out a frustrated curse, calling Leo a little rascal and reminding him that he was supposed to keep a low profile. He worried those wheels would draw too much attention, and yet, not even 3 minutes later, the secret was out. With a resigned sigh, Arthur eventually gave him a small nod. Having received Arthur's silent permission, Leo let go of all restraint. His aura erupted in full force as a brilliant golden halo manifested behind his back. At this moment, anyone watching would have been awestruck, as if a demon-slaying god from the heavens had descended upon the mortal realm. It was quite a sight, really. Leo leveled his blade in front of him and told them to bring it on. No sooner had he spoken than a piercing pillar of light suddenly erupted from Marcus's eyes. Marcus's companions immediately shouted for him to just teach the boy a lesson, warning him not to actually kill the junior. They clearly underestimated who they were dealing with. A smirk played on Leo's lips as he prepared a direct overhead strike. Gripping his long blade tightly, he swung it down toward Marcus's head with terrifying momentum. At the same time, he activated his barrier-breaking ability. We see the once blinding pillar of light begin to dissolve before their very eyes, leaving Marcus gasping in disbelief. Marcus stammered that it was impossible, claiming his divine authority couldn't be broken. In the Western territories, the concept of divine beasts was the foundation of their entire power system. It was a belief they held from childhood. The more pious the believer, the greater their potential. But in this moment, Marcus's lifelong convictions seemed to waver. Marcus quickly snapped back to his senses and let out a furious roar, calling upon the supreme light of the true law to descend upon the world. The once clear sky instantly became blindingly bright as a massive pillar of light crashed down from the heavens, surging directly toward Leo. With a slight shift of his feet on the sun-moon wheels, Leo's figure blurred, moving several meters to the side to effortlessly dodge the descending light. Immediately after, he swung a blood-red blade light forward. The wheels beneath him provided a sudden, powerful surge of energy at that exact instant. Suddenly, he felt the unmistakable sensation of a breakthrough. At the same time, his two blood-red claws became even easier to control, moving with a mind of their own. With staggering momentum, the claws lunged toward Marcus, who was still busy forming hand seals. Arthur's eyes widened in complete shock at what he was seeing. He realized that Leo had actually broken through his cultivation rank mid-battle, and his claws had surpassed the limits of the law. Leo stared Marcus down with cold intensity. He told him that today, his god wouldn't be able to save him. Before he could even finish the sentence, the blood-red claws were already closing in to tear through everything. The claws shattered Marcus's arms, sending him into a panic as he screamed for his teacher to save him. After all, Marcus was the star prodigy of their team. If his arms were truly ruined, the loss would be catastrophic. Their lead instructor quickly flicked a thread of light from his fingers to intervene. With a sharp snap, the light accurately bound Leo's claws. Seeing this, the Vermilion Academy students scoffed, clearly annoyed by such a sore loser. Arthur cleared his throat, stating that while he didn't care about their bickering before, what he had to say next was of the utmost importance. We learn that they are about to go to war with the elites of the Valley tribe. From this moment until the end, they must act as one. He warned them that if anyone let their petty personal grudges affect the bigger picture, they shouldn't blame him for being ruthless. As his words fell, the atmosphere became incredibly tense. It turns out the purpose of this gathering is to fight the Valley tribe for a massive hunting ground. This territory contains 20 million high-level spirit beasts, making it a prize worth killing for. The conditions for victory, however, are quite brutal. One side must be completely wiped out for the other to win. Naturally, everyone present is prepared to put their lives on the line. Soon, the students from the Vermilion Academy are fully armed and gathered, stepping in unison into the portal. After a flash of light, we see them transported to a mountain peak. Their senior leader, Sarah, immediately lowered her voice, telling everyone to perform one last gear check. She ordered them to hide their tracks so they could seize the advantage of a first strike. The group finished their checks and suppressed their auras. Following Sarah, they moved cautiously through the terrain. Before long, they reached a dense forest where Sarah signaled for everyone to halt. She turned to a lean young man named Henry and asked him to check the surroundings for any sign of the Valley tribe. Henry stepped forward as a ball of pale blue water vapor manifested in his hand. Under his control, the mist began to take a specific shape. It eventually condensed into a palm-sized water spirit. The little figure blinked its eyes and quickly floated deep into the dark woods. This is a water element scouting skill. It is virtually invisible and silent, making it the perfect tool for a dense forest environment like this one. Leo nodded silently, his eyes fixed on the forest entrance. Not long after, the little water spirit came drifting back at a leisurely pace. It landed in Henry's palm and dissolved back into mist. An excited look flashed across Henry's face as he delivered the news. He reported that his spirit found no sign of the Valley tribe nearby, meaning the advantage was theirs. Hearing this, a sharp light gleamed in Sarah's eyes. Sarah was just about to start assigning roles for an ambush when Leo stepped forward to stop her. "Wait a moment, Sarah," he said. He explained that his heightened sense of smell had picked up something very strange, the distinct scent of his mother's home-cooked pork ribs, of all things. In a wild, undeveloped region like this, such a scent was logically impossible. To be honest, it was quite bizarre. Something was definitely wrong. Sarah frowned and ordered Henry to check again, while telling Caleb, their resident flight expert, to scout the forest's flank from the air. After all, it would be quite embarrassing to be ambushed while trying to stage an ambush. That would be a disaster. As the two set off, we shift our gaze deep beneath the forest floor to a hidden tunnel. There, 24 green humanoid skeletons sat waiting in the darkness, including one particularly small skeleton who was busy rubbing monster essence blood onto a comrade named Bone Shield. It was a strange sight, to say the least. He questioned why he was using the precious blood now, since they didn't even know if they would survive the coming battle. Actually, the Bone tribe uses this blood to soak their frames and increase their power, with green signifying the powerful mystic mirror rank. Bone Shield looked quite pleased, telling the others to use their supplies now rather than leaving them for someone else to find. However, he was confident that their hiding spot was perfect, and that once the humans entered their trap, they wouldn't know what hit them.